everyone, and I'm Alexis, aka the Sloth Breeder, and I'm here today to do the Halloween in July tag. As always, I will leave the original creators link down below. I will also leave Allie at Hardback Hoarder and Julie from Pages and Pens videos because I saw both of them do that down below as well. Basically, this whole video is about Halloween, but in July instead of in October, and I adore Halloween. In the great Halloween and Christmas debate, I choose neither side because I love them both equally, but I love them both a lot. So let's just go ahead and get into the deck. Question number 1 is, which book gave you the creeps? In general, I really like horror, but I find that books don't really creep me out that much. I'm much more terrified by like scary movies. But I will say one book that definitely had scenes that made chills go down my spine would be Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. There's the scene towards the end of the book, no spoilers obviously, but they're in like tunnels. That you can see the tunnel right here on the cover. But they're in like a tunnel in like an old thing, and there are these like creatures that are like possessed people basically, and this one possessed lady like fits half of her body in like a ticket window thing, and that part freaked me out. Like I was like, no, like I'm not here for whatever that is. So definitely I'm gonna give it to Lair of Dreams. Question number 2 is, which book gives you the best Halloween vibes? And for that I'm gonna go with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which is a classic I absolutely adore. And I think it's pretty obvious why this one gives me Halloween vibes, because Frankenstein's monster is kind of one of the classic Halloween monsters, up there with Dracula and mummies and zombies. So when I read this question, this was the first thing that popped into my head, and I feel like it's so appropriate. Question number 3 is, what is your favorite vampire book? And so I have 2 books I'm going to talk about, because the first one is the one that's like is my favorite, but I figured I would go ahead and recommend something that is not as well known as the other one that I'm gonna mention, just to give like a recommendation. So hands down, my favorite vampire series is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. I have talked many times about my love for the series and how nostalgic the series and how much the series means to me. When I was in high school, me and my group of friends binge read the series, and so it was like a thing that we bonded over. So the series is very special to me in that way. However, I will say another vampire series I do really like is the Strange Angel series by Lily St. Croix. And this is a very underrated vampire series. It's YA, and it follows our main character Drew, who is like a monster hunter, and then one day her father dies, and it basically sets her on this path to discovering the secrets of her family and what she actually is. And basically she is like a female vampire, which is like incredibly rare in this society, and there are like people who are trying to hunt her for that reason. And yeah, I really enjoyed the series again when I was a teen. I haven't read them since then, but at the time I did really enjoy these. Question number 4 is, what is your favorite book about witches, goblins, ghosts, and demons? So I do have a couple of recommend for this. The first one I'm going to recommend is a series that's actually about goblins and elves, and it is the Hollow Kingdom trilogy by Claire B. Dunkel. This is another one of my all-time favorite series. It's one of the only series I've ever read more than once. This is a companion trilogy where each book follows a different girl as she kind of plays a role in this epic feud between goblins and elves, and each girl kind of falls in a different area, and each book kind of covers a different part of this conflict. And I really do love this series. It is very much about goblins, and yeah, so I figured I would recommend this one. For a book about demons and ghosts and witches, they're kind of all included, I went with the Devil's Kiss duology by Sarwat Shada, the first book being The Devil's Kiss, the second book being Dark Goddess. And this follows our main character Billy, who is also like a supernatural hunter. So she hunts supernatural creatures, and she's basically been under the tutelage of her father her whole life. And some stuff starts happening, and she basically discovers that she is the center of a prophecy, and this prophecy is centered around a great conflict. Each book has its own kind of mini plot, but I really love the first one, or I did when I read it years ago. But I do think this is a great paranormal duology if that's something you're looking for. For another book with ghosts and or demons, I was going to recommend Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendare Blake. This is one where it's another one about Our main character, Kaz, is a ghost hunter, so he travels from place to place hunting ghosts, and he moves to this town to fight a ghost called Anna dressed in blood that is extremely vicious, and she kills anyone who comes into her house. And so Kaz goes to try and get rid of her, and along the way he realizes that there's something very special about Anna, and that she's not just like any other ghost. And so he kind of learns about Anna's story, and meanwhile he actually gets to know Anna, and it kind of all goes from there. So yes. And if you're looking for something that's a little bit more lighthearted, that kind of has the great early 2000s cheesiness we all know and love, I would recommend the Mediator series by Meg Cabot. This follows our main character, Suze, who is, as you guessed it, a mediator, meaning that she can talk to ghosts. It's a 7-book series, and each book kind of follows its own mini storyline as Suze is dealing with these ghosts that she meets and their own stories as she's trying to help them move along. But meanwhile, she actually kind of starts to fall in love with the ghost who's actually living in her new house, Jesse, who was murdered 200 years prior, and she's also like kind of trying to help him with his own mystery as they're falling in love. And it's a really, really fun series. Like I said, it's like very early 2000s by Cabot, but if you're looking for something that's supernatural but also very fun, I would recommend the series. The next question is, what book scared you so much that you had to sleep with the lights on? So I don't really have a question for this because, like I said, books don't really scare me. I don't know why, but I try to read scary books and they don't really do anything for me. But I will say that I was reading a copy of The Demoniac by Kat Ross because I had an arc of it a couple of years back, and I remember that there was this one part where they were in like a basement, and this like presence was in the basement with them, and they could sense it, and they could sense like how like terrifying and how malicious this presence was, and they were like freaking out. And I remember that I did have to turn the lights on while I was reading that part because it did spook me. But that is the only example I could think of, and I think that was the only part in that book that kind of got to me. But yeah, so that's my answer for that. Question number 6 is, what book do you wish was scarier than it was? And for me, in this answer, I have to go with Bird Box by Josh Malerman. This was a book that so many people said just gave them the creeps, just totally blew their minds, and it really wasn't that for me. I didn't really find any of this book scary. Actually, I found more scenes in this book just to be really, really sad than anything. I don't really ever feel like I was reading this book and I ever got terrified at all, and I thought it was really slow and really boring, and the ending was ultimately really unsatisfying, so everything about this book just kind of didn't work for me. But I picked it up specifically because I thought it was going to be scary, and it was not that. So the final question is, what is your favorite book that takes place in October? And I don't have an answer for a book that takes place in October, but I thought about books that have scenes that take place in October, and the only one I could think of, but I'm happy with it, which I will explain, is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. So in this first book, there is a October scene where they all dress up and go to school and stuff, and it's kind of a huge deal because like it takes place in like a whole chapter. But I remember in this book that Laura Jean, the main character, talks about how she feels about Halloween as a Korean American, because she talks about how difficult Halloween is for her, because if she doesn't dress as an Asian character, people are always like, what are you supposed to be? Are you from an anime? And people don't understand it, so she feels like she's so limited to only dressing as like an Asian character. So she ends up inevitably always going as Cho Chang from Harry Potter. So this is the only book I could think of, but I'm happy with it because I really like that social commentary in this book about Halloween and how it really only caters to white people mostly, and not to Asian Americans. So I really, really, really liked that scene. Alrighty guys, so that was the Halloween and July tag. Like I said, I will leave everybody's videos linked down below. This is a really fun tag. It makes me really, really excited for October. You guys always know that I read spooky books or thrillers in October, and I'm so excited because I've already got my TBR planned and it's gonna be great. I would love to know what books gave you guys the creeps, because I do absolutely love horror. If you like what I do, upload videos on Monday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, and I'll see you guys soon with another one. Bye!